Hello and welcome to Power Skills with Janna. I'm Janna Jones, your leadership development specialist, coach, and mentor, here to guide you through building the skills that matter most in your personal and professional life. This podcast episode is going to be a little bit different as I want to share a personal process of closing out my year. It's not really a professional one, although I do a part of it with my team each year, usually as well. So every new year, my husband and I set our intentions, but almost more importantly, we get complete on our previous year together. A very wonderful leader and mentor from earlier in my career shared this with me, and my husband loves it so much that we've now been doing this process together ever since we first started dating. Previous to that, I did it on my own as well. I will, of course, talk to you about intention setting because that's the fun part that everyone wants to do as well. But I think the sense of closure that you get from this first part is perhaps the most valuable. So, for context, personal context, of course, we will usually do this over a glass of whiskey on New Year's Eve, sitting outside under the stars in our outdoor living area. We're in Australia, so it's really hot. If you're from the Northern Hemisphere, maybe outside is distracting. So, you do you. Pick what would work best for you. But we start with the tough stuff. We talk through what didn't work well, what we didn't appreciate in our year, what we didn't value. I say that this is the tough stuff because it can be twofold. Sometimes that self reflection is really hard. We may have to acknowledge that we gave our attention, effort, and energy to some stuff that didn't pay off, or it made us feel more miserable this year. It can feel a little bit brutal in doing this, but don't worry, the next step in this process will help letting go of that feeling. Likewise, if you are choosing to do this exercise with a partner, with friends, or with family, sometimes the things that we don't like and didn't appreciate in our year include them. So it can feel a little bit like swimming in concrete at times. So, for example, this year, I will probably reiterate to my husband that I did not appreciate the many times in which he was able to adapt and to organize his life around his friends or boys' nights, but seemed to be challenged by and have very limited capacity to do the same for me. And relationships take work, and living in the same house together and raising kids together doesn't make a relationship, it makes tenants in common. It won't be a new revelation for him because we have very open conversations all the time. I've never been backwards about coming forwards with the stuff that doesn't work for me. And he's a good man. So he listens actively to understand, bless him. And we work out well together as a general rule. Hopefully, it won't be new for the person that you're connecting with either. But say perhaps that it is. In that case, I would recommend that you consider using I language with an emphasis on how you felt and what you experienced rather than the accusatory language of you did or you didn't do this. It's also good to consider what you might need to happen instead in order to turn the dial for you, perhaps making a request if that's something that you need support with from the other person. Backtracking slightly, because why would I bring that up again if I've already discussed it with him when that's not usually my modus operandi? Well, because in this instance, and with the intention behind this practice, when I lay it out on the table, I have the option of leaving it there and or choosing to intentionally commit to doing something differently as we move into the new year together. For example, my husband might say, we just get so busy sometimes. And it's not my intention to take you for granted. I don't even notice that I'm doing it sometimes until it's way out of balance. So I will make sure that I pay more attention to that. I may also need you to just let me know sometimes when it's too much for you as well. In that way, I also get to hear what he needs from me to make sure that we're aligned and still moving forward together. Consider this across all of your values areas, whether those things are family, relationships, health and well-being, your professional life, your travel and experiences. Sometimes I find it really helpful to have those areas of my life that I value the most written down in front of me so that I consider each in turn. I might then talk about how my me time is always the first thing to go when I get busy or I feel overwhelmed, which is probably completely counterintuitive as it sits underneath the health and well-being as a high priority for me. whether it's my creative outlets or my gym time or disconnecting and reconnecting. It really does make you reassess your values and how you prioritize them, and can also help you as you start to consider your intentions. As a side note, do not write any of this down. We want to leave it there, not take it with us. So, unless you're considering a ceremonial burning as part of this personal practice, I would not recommend writing these down. Please do not avoid this part either. If you are a person that typically avoids conflict or confrontation, this may feel deeply uncomfortable for you, but it's actually the most important part of the whole exercise for two reasons. Because when we reflect on what we didn't value, we are less likely to do more of the things that got us there in the first place, or to give our attention and energy to that moving forward. Or we can even make different commitments that will counterbalance it for us. Also, because when we lay it all out there on the table, we get the option to leave it there. If it didn't make you happy, whether that is relationships, ways of being, expensive skincare, compromising your me time, do not take it with you. I cannot stress this enough, because at the end of the day, it really is your choice. If it didn't make you happy in 2024, leave it there. The next step in our New Year's practice is to reflect on the things that moved us. What made us happy? What do we have to celebrate, appreciate, be thankful for? What have we really valued in our lives across the year? I hope that all of my encouragement around celebrating your successes as a non-negotiable makes this one easier for you. But I know that for some people it's not. So again, the values headings might be helpful for you as well. This might actually be my favorite part. And sometimes I have to go back through images on my phone to remember some of the stuff that feels like it was way more than a year ago by this stage. When I do this exercise at the end of the year with my team, I often have to go through my calendar to see some of the significant pieces of work that we did at the start of the year, which I may have otherwise forgotten. This part of my end of year personal practice is the most effective bridge I have ever built. It allows me the mental reset after reflecting on the challenges and the stuff that didn't work into a more positive, reflective state. It allows us to consider what we are good at and what we do well and what we absolutely nailed this year, where we find joy and awe and value in our lives before we start to reshape our focus with a forward-facing outlook and consider what is now possible in 2025. To help with this process one year, I actually bought jars for each of our family members and colored Post-it notes, and they all sat in the middle of our dining table. And each week we wrote down the things that we loved, what brought us joy, and any major milestones and happy moments that we wanted to remember by the end of the year. Reading these at the end of that year and sharing a couple together was such a joyous flood of memories and brought such a content sense of closure to our year. While you don't have to come up with an exhaustive list, this activity could set you in a point of feeling a sense of completion with the year that was. Now, before we move into intentions, I want to share why it's important as a term or a distinction rather than resolutions, which is much more common at practice at New Year's. The word resolution or resolute is finite and outcome focused. And if resolved as a negative, so for example, I'm not going to take the elevator. The brain is lazy. We use less than 5% of its cognitive capacity because of its innate desire to save energy. So our brain will ignore the pesky little words in the middle and instead be wanting to take the elevator. There is no room for movement or creativity in a resolution either. It is fixed. I believe that's why so many are broken so quickly. Like handcuffs, we can't help to strain against them. Intentions, on the other hand, are more about the process, the purpose, the journey, the experience. They're an aim, a plan, more than just an outcome. They allow us to be more mindful of what it is that we actually want. They are experienced as far more freeing language by the brain, and so it fills in the gaps. We don't like ambiguity. For example, if you set an intention to live healthier, Your brain hates that ambiguity. So it fills in the gaps of what that could mean as a greater journey, such as yoga classes at the gym, calm meditations to switch off from work, meat-free Mondays. You are free to do your own creative thinking that can and should change and adapt with you as the year goes on. So give yourself the option of embracing your growth and progress by setting intentions this year rather than the closed language of a resolution. Again, for context, I often like to consider this in terms of my personal values headings again, so that I cover all bases, but you do you. My husband and I will actually write it down at this point, jotting stuff down in a notebook, and then we will align on a few key intentions for the year, write them down, and make it look pretty and aesthetically pleasing because I sometimes value that. And then it goes onto our fridge. Note this is quite different from goal setting. It is not usually time bound. It's probably not overly measurable or specific. It's not fixed or forced, but open and welcoming. That is our main aim here. So, for example, I might write something down like prioritize me as a heading. And under it, I might then note what that means, such as prioritizing the things that make me happy and whole, allowing myself the space and time to be creative, fit, and healthy just as readily as I would give my time to others. Consider what is most valuable and meaningful for you. It could be finding awe and gratitude in the day to day, or following a budget that takes you closer towards a future of financial independence, or radical well being, meditating often, meal prep ahead of busy weeks, consistent movement, and valuing downtime. Whatever that looks like for you is a perfectly good place to start. One final note, or two actually, if I may. Please make sure that you write down your intentions in the positive rather than negative language. You'll note that I didn't say don't overspend or lose weight or no more stress. Why? Well, what are the main words here that you're focused on? Overspend, weight, stress. And what you focus on, you amplify. It is a disaster waiting to happen. Also, I try to let go of numbers or constraints wherever I can. So, for example, in considering what radical well-being meant, I do transcendental meditation, which is 20 minutes twice a day, but I wouldn't write down twice daily meditations. Why? Well, because sometimes that's not necessarily possible. And like the language of resolution, the first time we don't do it, we feel a sense of failure. Meditating often or consistently is enough, and the language itself is far more open and generous and freeing. Gosh, I hope that's as valuable for you as it has been for me over the years. And as you review this past year and start to feel a sense of completion and set your intentions for the next one, remember that growth is a journey, not a destination. It is not about being perfect. It's about consistently showing up for yourself, learning from the past, and stepping into the future with clear intention and purpose. And please remember, if it hasn't made you happy in 2024, leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me in this episode of Power Skills with Janna. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready for a sense of completion in their year and to step into the new one with purpose. If there's something in particular that you're excited to work on as you close out this year and move into the next one, I would love to hear from you. So please drop me a message or comment. You can connect with me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn via Power Skills Development, or visit my website, www.powerskillsdevelopment.com, for more resources to support your growth. This will actually be my final episode for 2024, as I am fulfilling some of my own intentions for the year, and I'm taking some downtime to spend with family and friends over the holiday season. Thank you so much for your support and connection. I hope to reconnect with you again in 2025. And wherever you are, stay safe, stay curious, and keep growing. Have a fabulous rest of your week. And here's to another year filled with possibility and purpose.